How can you disable specific auto configuration classes in Spring Boot? We can disable specific auto configuration classes in Spring Boot by using Spring Boot application annotation with the exclude attribute. For example, you can see at Spring Boot application inside the bracket, we are excluding a particular class, that is exclude equals to data source auto configuration dot class. It will disable the data source auto configuration class. Alternatively, we can use the Spring Boot spring.autoconfigure.exclude property in our application.properties file to list the classes we want to exclude. What is the purpose of having a Spring Boot starter parent? The Spring Boot starter parent in a Spring Boot project provides a set of default configurations for Maven. It simplifies dependency management, specifies common properties like Java version, and includes useful plugins. The parent POM ensures consistent versions of dependencies and plugins. It reducing the need for manual configuration and helping maintain uniformity across Spring Boot projects. How do starters simplify the Maven or Gradle configurations? Starters in Maven or Gradle simplify configurations by bundling common dependencies into a single package, instead of manually specifying each dependency for a particular feature, that is like a web development or a JPA. We can add a starter, example Spring Boot Starter Web, which includes all necessary libraries. This reduces configuration complexity and it ensures compatibility and speed up the setup process, allowing developers to focus more on coding and less on dependency management. How do you create REST APIs? To create REST APIs in Spring Boot, I annotate my class with @REST controller and define methods with @get mapping, @post mapping, @put mapping, or @delete mapping to handle HTTP requests. I use @response body for input data and @path variable or a request parameter for URL parameters. I implement service logic and return responses as a Java objects, which Spring Boot automatically converts to JSON. This setup handles API endpoints for CRUD operations. What is versioning in REST? What are the ways that we can implement versioning? Versioning in REST APIs helps to manage changes without breaking existing clients. It allows different versions of the API to exist at the same time, making it easier for clients to upgrade gradually. We can use version REST APIs in several ways. That includes the version number in the URL, example API/version v1/resource. Add a version parameter in the URL like API resource and version equals to 1. Use custom headers to specify the version, that is accept equals to application/vnd, example v1 plus JSON, or use media types of versioning, that is application vnd dot example v1 plus JSON. So here we have 3 types of versioning. That is we can see version number 1, we can say, that is version parameter, and the other one is like custom headers, and the other one is media type. What are the REST API best practices? Best practices for REST APIs are using the right HTTP methods, that is get, post, put, delete, keeping each request independent, that is stateless, naming resources clearly and handling errors consistently with clear messages and status codes, using versioning to manage updates, securing APIs with HTTPS and input validation, and using pagination for large datasets to make responses manageable. What are the uses of ResponseEntity? ResponseEntity in Spring Boot is used to customize responses. It lets us set HTTP status codes, add custom headers, and return responses data as Java objects. This flexibility helps to create detailed and informative responses. For example, new response entity. So here you can see a diamond operator, and inside that we are passing a text, that is hello world, and we are giving a status, HTTP status as OK, and it sends back hello world with the status code 200 OK. What should the delete API method status code could be? The delete API method should be typically written a status code of 200 OK. If the deletion is successful and returns a response body. 204 is a no content if the deletion is successful without a response body. A 404 not found if the resource to be deleted does not exist. What is Swagger? Swagger is an open source framework for designing, building, and documenting REST APIs. It provides tools for creating interactive API documentation, making it easier for developers to understand and interact with the API. How does a Swagger help in documenting APIs? Swagger helps documenting APIs by providing a user-friendly interface that displays API endpoints. It has a request and response formats and available parameters. It generates interactive documentation from API definitions. It is allowing developers to test endpoints directly from the documentation and ensuring accurate up-to-date for API information. What all servers are provided by Spring Boot and which one is default? Spring Boot provides several embedded servers including Tomcat, Jetty and Undertow. By default, Spring Boot uses Tomcat as the embedded servers unless another server is specified. How does Spring Boot decide which embedded server to use if multiple options are available in the class path? Spring Boot decides which embedded server to be used based on the order of dependencies in the class path. If multiple server dependencies are present, it selects the first one found. For example, if both Tomcat and Jetty are present, it will use the one that appears first in the dependency list.